All right. Hello, I'm Brian Bowles, the Executive Director of MAOPS, and I'm joined by our lobbyist, Jay Hahn. We wanted to update you on the prescription drug monitoring program. With the passage of Senate Bill 63, Missouri became the last state in the nation to legislate a prescription drug monitoring program. So Jay's going to discuss the bill's provisions and its expected impact on Missouri physicians with us today. Jay, it was a difficult year in the Capitol all the way around with the pandemic and a lot of infighting, but and unlike most years when the PDMP issue came up this year, it didn't consume the debate time that it has in the past and seemed to pass with a little less fanfare and controversy than in the past. So can you give us a little bit of an idea of why, after so many years of stalemate, this was finally the year that the law passed?
Yeah, and thank you, Brian, for having me, and thank you to the members for tuning in to listen what happened on Senate Bill 63, what its implementation is, and what your implications will be for you as a physician. So your statement that it was a tough year, yeah, it was a very, very tough year. And so I can certainly appreciate why the question would be, how did a PDMP bill pass the Missouri General Assembly in what was otherwise a very difficult year? And several answers to that. Keep in mind that this is the 9th consecutive year that this legislation has been worked on. And that's probably the largest contributing factor. On average, it takes about 5 years to get a bill passed to the governor's desk. We're on year number 9, and finally it was signed by our governor this past Monday. And other contributing factors as to why this bill passed is that as you continue to work and massage your bill through the process, you reach a point at which you reach an agreement with multiple stakeholders. This particular version of the bill has been lessened or lightened to appease a variety of stakeholders, including physicians. So it was really just a culmination of many years of progress, getting the bill in the right shape at the right time, and getting it to a place where opposition was lessened, and it was just the right year to pass.
Great, great. Well, thanks for sticking in there with us for all those years and this year especially. We've always been concerned that a PDMP that mandated physician use could be a real negative thing for the profession. And we've always advocated that it not be used as a punitive tool either. This year's bill appears to satisfy both of those criteria, with the dispenser being required to do all of the reporting. How does this bill compare to what we desired?
Yeah, so listen, we came out in pretty good shape is the answer. As a organization of physicians, it is a tool that will be afforded to our members at their discretion should they choose to use it. There's no enforcement mechanism that requires us to use it. And the kind of guardrails that were placed into this bill are beneficial to physicians on multiple levels. This bill had a variety of protections for your average Joe Missouri citizen, and really enables our physicians only to use it as a tool as they see fit. That's where this bill landed, and generically, that's probably about the best spot that we could be for our members.
All right. Well, I did want to, provide one bit of information, a little bit of negative information about the bill, or the implications of the bill. That while no mandate for physician use was included in this bill, there is a caveat that everyone needs to be aware of, because a federal law in 2018 called the Support for Patients and Communities Act was passed by Congress. And that bill does stipulate that state Medicaid programs require that providers check their state's PDMP for any enrollee's prescription drug history before prescribing a new controlled substance. So this is in effect as of October 1 of this year federally. I did note that about a month ago, just before this bill passed, MoHealthNet published a rule stating that this was required even prior to this being passed. So the people using the St. Louis PDMP would have had to comply. So just be aware that that is the case for Medicaid patients. It's not the state law that requires it, it's federal law. I'd also advise physicians to be cognizant of any attempts by employers and corporations to require use of the PDMP through company policy. And there may be opportunities for physicians to have a voice in that process at that time. So something to be aware of. These laws can be used for good or bad and can turn good or bad in the rulemaking component or in future legislation. So we'll be keeping an eye on it. So Jay, is there anything else about the PDMP that our members should be aware of?
Yeah, Brian, you bring up a really interesting point. And if you were to go through and read the bill, you will notice that all language remains silent on third parties, private pay, federal agencies, federal programs at which our physicians may or may not participate in. It remains silent in large on enforcing the program via, call it tying your hands through a federal agency, or quite frankly, even consider, health carriers. We haven't seen that pop up yet as far as health carriers around the United States. And we do have many, many examples in other states. So we know what to watch for, but always be on guard for a kind of a gotcha moment for what would otherwise be mandatory participation into this program. And usually what we see in industries is that once there's a mandatory participation, there tends to be a penalty provision if you fail to participate. So those are the things that we always watch for. We'll probably talk in just a few moments about the physicians that are already participating in a PDMP. We will be mindful of what do we do once this bill is fully implemented. But those are the things we're going to continue to watch for.
Okay. So speaking of that, when is this going to be fully implemented? And then what happens to the St. Louis PDMP at that point?
Yeah, good question. And nothing in our state government is ever easy. So we'll start with the kind of the basics and we'll work our way through the timeline. The bill recently signed by the governor will follow a standardized enactment date, which is August 28th of this year. So that's when the bill starts, or the clock starts. But really, it's important to know that there are a few stair steps of implementation. The language that was signed by the governor stipulates that a private vendor must go out for the competitive bid process and bid out the management of this PDMP program. And the statute stipulates that needs to take place starting January 1 of 2023. The vendor really needs to be up and running. And the final provisions need to be in place, running and active to be searched by kind of call it the final deadline of January 1, 2024. And notwithstanding other provisions of law, for instance, various provisions of the implementation of PDMP will be guided by the task force, which, Brian, as you know, is made up of 2 members of the Board of Healing Arts, 2 members of the Board of Pharmacy, 1 member of the Board of Nursing that holds an APRN designation, and 1 member of the Board of Dentistry. And so that task force will also control a series of deadlines throughout implementation.
So it looks like if everything goes according to schedule, in the next 18 months, this program should be up and running. If everything does go according to schedule, which isn't a guarantee.
Correct. And something to be mindful of, there's language in this bill, now law, that says any other PDMP that operates in the state shall be superseded by this program. And the language used says that any other PDMP that is actively running, those operations must cease once the vendor has a full kind of operation of the PDMP. And, you know, the reference here really should be St. Louis County PDMP. The bill also allows for, call it a importing or a transfer of data from that PDMP into what would become the statewide PDMP.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Well, we will be watching the further development of this and monitoring rules and regulations and future statute related to this, because I'm sure we're not finished yet. But it does give us a PDMP. Hopefully we learn something by waiting till very last, and it'll be implemented fairly simply. But Jay, I'd like to thank you for your time on discussion of this topic, and encourage any members that have any additional questions to contact me here at the central office at any time. Thank you.